Good morning, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the Orlando Sentinel editorial board interview with the candidates for U.S. House District 10, which is largely in Orange County. We are joined today by Maxwell Frost, who, if he is elected, would be the youngest member of Congress, and Colonel Calvin Wimbish, who, if he is elected, will be only the second Green Beret to ever join Congress. So it's a really interesting race, high interest in Central Florida from across the nation, and we are so glad that both candidates decided to join us. We will be talking briefly with the candidates about the issues in this race. And we've got some questions for them. We are joined today by, and you'll see later on the video, our editor, Julie Anderson, our Insight editor, Jay Reddick, and one of our political reporters, Steve Lamangella. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with our questions. And this one is something that is on the mind of a lot of people in Central Florida right now, with one of the hottest housing markets in the nation. Do you support the current policy of the Fed in increasing interest rates pretty steadily? And we'll start with Colonel Wimbish.
You look at the interest rates as they are now versus where they were a few years ago. I'm not happy with what has become the norm. And the interest rates are continually rising and will continue to rise up to possibly 6% if they get another 75% basis point added on next week. Everyone is suffering from the pain with no gain, which what's happening. And when you can't pay your mortgage or you can't pay your rent because the cost of living is inflated to a point of diminishing returns, something needs to change. And it changes at all levels, not only at the federal level, for which I'm seeking the opportunity to be the congressman and for Orange County constituents, but it has to be worked down through the local levels, through the states and down to the county commissioners, the mayor, the city council, and then the people need to understand just what can be done to help make that dollar become more worth a dollar than it is right now. And the current tax burden on everyone, people who employ us and those who expect a paycheck, cannot continue. So inflation is tied exactly to this problem with interest rates increasing, and the way the economy is headed right now, I don't see it coming down anytime soon, and it likely will have 2 more bumps before the end of the year.
Mr. Frost.
Well, thank you so much. I do agree. I mean, we have one of the worst affordable housing and just housing crisis in the entire country right here in Central Florida. We know that, the Fed raising interest rates to help keep inflation down, I mean, it's going to hit consumers the hardest. It's going to hit working class families the hardest. It's going to hit folks who are already having a hard time paying for groceries and stuff like that the hardest. And so for me, it's really important that we do everything we can to get a hold of this housing issue, to get a hold of all these issues so we can ensure that the government's in a place where those can go down. I feel optimistic and confident that over the next few years, we're going to get to a better place on all these issues and provide working families the relief that they need. And I know I bring up working families a lot. For me, it's important. My theory of change is really based on a foundation that looks at the most vulnerable people in our district as we legislate, as we talk about every single issue, because I truly believe that when those folks have the opportunity they need, we all stand to benefit as a community, and that's what being a society is about. So looking through the lens of poor and working class families, folks who are working in this community and being pushed out, the increasing interest rates are not helpful for them. And, as a member of Congress, I'm going to fight specifically on that issue, but also on everything else, because all of these issues are connected, and we have to ensure that we get a hold of inflation.
Thank you. And actually, I did want to follow that up by talking just a little bit more about housing. What other changes would you support to the federal housing policy that might make housing more in reach for more Americans, if any? And Mr. Frost, can we start with you?
Yeah, well, there's some great legislation out there right now that I would get behind on day one. One is the Homes for All Act, which would direct the federal government over the course of about 8 to 10 years to appropriate money to build 12 million new affordable housing units across the country. We do have an affordable housing problem, but we also just have a housing problem, right? And it's not just about housing, it's also about housing near opportunity. I mean, people can go out and find a place to live that's affordable 2-3 hours away from town. But we also have to think about building a community where people's home is where their house is. And right now, where a lot of folks are living in a place, it's not the community that they were born and raised in. And because of lack in public transportation, they're having trouble getting here to go to work. And people are having 2 to 3 hour commutes every day. So the Homes for All Act, I think, is incredibly important. But we also have to get creative. And by creative, I mean creative solutions like mixed income housing developments, which actually provide some burden relief on our developers and landlords who are actually looking to provide this type of affordable housing for people here in Central Florida. There's some great projects in the works. Just had a meeting the other day with Universal and some folks who are working on a mixed income housing development that will have 1,000 units. And what that means is there will be folks who pay the market rate. And that helps subsidize the families who can't really afford it, but still want to live in Central Florida, still want to live in Orlando, still want to live here in their homes. And so for me, it's working with the municipal and county government, ensuring that I'm doing the work I need to do at the federal level, voting for bills that make sense. But also just, we got to work together, especially on these creative solutions to provide for working class families here in Central Florida. And that's what I'll do as a member of Congress.
All right, Colonel Wimbish.
When it comes to the federal level of this legislating what will happen, we have to know and remember whose money are we talking about, because it's easy to use other people's money to try to create housing for all, like Medicare for all. And at some point you run out of other people's money. What I will do with any bill that's in Congress is to make sure that we streamline it to such that the money that is being allocated for housing to help with affordable housing, and there's mixed housing units already underway here in Orlando, where people do not have to move out of the community they are in. I was just down in Washington Shores. There's a LIFT program. It is beautiful because it's a start in the right direction, but it takes everyone working together. And it's not just the federal level that needs to allocate or push down all the funding. We need to let the states get involved, and again, go back to the county mayors, our mayor of Orange County, and the cities, and the commissioners, and the people in the community. Many people do not want to move outside of where they are, but when you walk through many of the areas like Washington Shores, Pine Hills, and Paramore, you find a lot of homes that are abandoned that need to be either fixed up or replaced. A lot of that is going on, but a lot more is needed. I am willing to go to Congress and make sure that when I legislate with the fellow congressmen, we need to not only look at our local community, but remember, we have to look at all the constituents. Out in Westfield, there's a huge community that is now in poverty as much as those that are over in Pine Hills and Paramore. My goal is to make sure as the congressman for all the constituents, regardless of your political stripes, we're going to make a difference so that when the housing is available, jobs are available, those who have the capability to develop these properties don't just go and say they're going to do something, then allocate the money elsewhere. I've seen and I know where money has been appropriated for projects to help the people where the housing needs to be, and then it's moved into a general fund and moved to some other project. And 2 years from now is too long. We need to start the effort here and now. When I go to Congress, one of the first things I will do is make sure that I'm on the committee that when we do look at building legislation to build housing, we do it in a manner that makes it fair and equitable for the federal government not to be overwhelmingly hawkish about where the money goes to, but give it down to the states so the state legislatures can do their jobs.
Colonel Wimbish, thank you. Thank you for that answer. I had a quick question for you both. It's sort of a national issue that trickles down toward all of us locally. I wondered your opinion with all the recent rulings from the Supreme Court and everything else on abortion rights and healthcare access for all. I just wanted to get your opinion on the recent rulings and did they go too far and how did you feel about the way that went? And Colonel Wimbish, we will start with you.
Well, first of all, the wonderful thing about our United States of America and our Constitution, and the fact that we as humans have free will. But when it comes to abortion, the decision was made to put it back in the state's hand where it should have stayed before the decision was made 50 years ago. Everything has to be done within the law. And we have laws that are vary from coast to coast and from other countries. We have now in the state of Florida 5 weeks to make a decision as to whether or not a child may have to be aborted. I'm a pro-lifer. I believe in life from conception. But at the end of the day, it's all about what is right under the law for the mother, the father, their God, and their doctor to decide on what's happening to the life, that there should be no exceptions, because life begins and life ends, and God should have the power to make that and not us. But we do these things because we're trying to appease everyone. At the same token, we need to realize we must operate within the limits of the law. And if the constituents feel there's a change that needs to be made, bring it to the state house and let the state legislature figure that out.
Thank you. Mr. Frost, your views on this?
You know, there's three very disturbing opinions that have come down in the past many months. The first one, obviously, is the fact that we woke up a few months ago and found out that over half of our population, women and people who can bear children, no longer have a federally mandated right to having an abortion, a safe and legal abortion. And I am vocally someone who it's not just about being pro-choice, it's not just about being pro-life, but it's about understanding that people should have the bodily autonomy to make the decisions that they want to make. This is pretty personal for me. I was adopted at birth. My biological mother is someone who went through many different problems and strife, and I know usually adoption is used to paint a bad picture of abortion, but I just bring it up to say I've had so many conversations with my biological mother about the decision point that she had to make, and how it wasn't about her, it wasn't about a politician. It was a conversation between her and her maker, her God, and what she wanted to do. And that the sanctity of that conversation, and the thing that many women and people go through in this country, should remain in the hands of the people themselves. The second one is the horrible decision around our environment and the EPA. I mean, we need to ensure as a federal government that we're doing everything we can to protect our lands. In Florida, we are in ground zero for the climate crisis, for the problem of what's going on and not holding corporations accountable for completely polluting our lands. And the third one that's really disturbing for me was around the gun one in New York, where they essentially said that states, and we're talking about states' rights and states' abilities to legislate, states are unable to say, hey, for you to go into a public park, you need a license for your concealed weapon. So for me, it's important to say vocally, I do believe that the Supreme Court went way too far. And we saw from the concurring opinion from Justice Thomas that they want to go further. They want to talk about contraception. They want to talk about the ability for gay folks and same-sex marriage. And so there's just a lot of work that needs to be done, and it's very disturbing.
I'd like to, you had brought up climate change, and I'd like to ask what, if anything, should Congress be doing to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other issues tied to climate change? We've all seen what California did, which is further than I think many people might be comfortable with. But I'd just like to get your opinion on what more you believe should be done. Colonel Wimbish, if we could start with you.
You know, 33 million metric tons of CO2 goes out around the world every day, every year. 85% of that is not created by America. America represents about 15%, and we are not ground zero for the things that he just mentioned. But the thing that we need to understand, though, let's take an analogy of a ship, and it's got a hole in it, and you patch it with 15% to try to keep the ship from sinking with overflow of water. We in America cannot control what the globalists and other countries are doing to impact this carbon footprint, this emissions that are going out. I want to make sure that what we have done in America can be developed and extended to other countries. It's our foreign policies that needs to be changing. China has 33% of the 30% of the emissions are created by them. And then you take other countries in the Middle East, and I've been to Africa. It's horrible with the smell. and that you have to deal with, but the technology is not there. We're trying to solve a global problem locally, and we can't, but we can do more in our country. And I'm very proud that America has done more than any other country to make sure that the carbon emissions are reduced. And we have better air than most places, and cleaner water, and the freedom to go and make better differences is available to us.
Mr. Frost.
Yes, thank you. Well, this is an issue that is one of the reasons I decided to run for Congress, because what we know to be true is every year, every term that we don't take the bold moves we need to make to ensure that we're protecting our planet and our species, we are just passing the bill on to the next generation. And guess what? That bill is doubling, if not tripling, every time we wait, because this issue is not waiting on us, the issue of the climate crisis. Florida is ground zero for the climate crisis here in the United States. We are already experiencing the effects all across this state. And, you know, there are places, I mean, we see what's going on in Pakistan right now. A third of Pakistan is underwater because of the climate crisis right now. Tons of people are dying. Our country shoulders great responsibility in this, and Colonel Wimbish is correct. We don't emit the most, right? However, if you look at the data, we have the biggest carbon footprint per person in this country. And yes, what we do here in this country can't completely dictate what others do, but what we can do is lead by example. And that's one of the reasons why I am so excited to be here running for Congress, and why I believe so much in this country, because we have done things to show the world the way forward. But we can't do that by sitting on our hands and not doing anything about the issue. I believe in what President Biden had put in the Build Back Better plan, ensuring that we establish a civilian climate corps that will put hundreds of thousands of people to work to build the no carbon infrastructure that we need right now all across this country. So there's a lot that needs to be done. I am for the Thrive Act and what's in it. But the fact is, we can lead by example, and we should.
There's a lot of things that are in these acts that he just mentioned that really are not helping the problem. In fact, it's increasing the problem. And we're not going to be able to solve it with just trying to do everything in one bill. You need to go in and make sure that the bill is streamlined and specific to the challenges that we have with carbon emission. We can do more, and we will do more as your congressman. I guarantee you that.
And that's the same rhetoric we've been hearing for generations, and we are still in this problem, and scientists are telling us that it is getting worse. And so that is why we need new thinking that is going to, yes, look at the specific problems, but also ensure that we are doing something and not hiding behind rhetoric and behind procedure to ensure that nothing gets done. I mean, this is our generation.
Thank you. And Julie, did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
I did have a follow-up question on the climate change. So there are two issues that are really particular to Florida. One is extreme heat and what that means to workers here, and the other, outdoor workers. And then the other is rising seas, which require cities along the coast to, enact some really expensive resiliency measures because of flooding streets and things like that. So what would you do as the congressman to ensure that Florida is getting its fair share to address those two issues, extreme heat and resiliency along the coast? Colonel Wimbish, start with you.
Yeah, well, extreme heat has been a natural phenomenon. We have to accept the fact that you look at the temperature degree that has happened over centuries, in fact, eons. It has only been changing very small, less than 1% each time. The fluctuation is going to occur. We know that the seas rise and fall. And as we in Florida look at our coastal areas where we're developing, we need to be careful where we develop, because sometimes developers may put people in harm's way by allowing land that should have remained not where you want to place housing, not where you want to place industry. We should have let those lands remain part of the natural flow. We're interfering with a lot of the natural things that have to happen for the animals and creatures in the sea that live along our coastline. We need to make sure that when we have the infrastructure in place, that we don't violate the very essence of what we had intended for our nation to have, our state to have when we build these coastal areas. You cannot really control what God is going to make happen one way or the other. But the extreme heat, I worked in the heat. I used to go out and pave streets, and it's something that you deal with. I lived in Texas and in Arizona, and in those places, it's 10 times hotter than we have here. I've been in Afghanistan and Iraq at 120 degrees, and people still know how to moderate and hydrate and make sure they can get through. This is something that's all going to affect us all. So it's not something I can turn the switch on and off about extreme heat, but we can make sure that we value lives by making sure the people who are living in our nation, where we let them live and along our coastal areas, don't get impacted by poor decision making by those who want to develop those areas.
When we look at this issue, we have to look at it in two different lights. The first one is looking at our contribution to the climate crisis and what's going on, and ensure that we make the bold moves we need to make to ensure that we are lessening that. We know that rising sea levels, one of the greatest contributors is our carbon footprint. Does this mean we're going to do something today and it's going to be fixed tomorrow? No. But it's about thinking about the future generation. Something I talked about in my campaign all the time was the 7th generation principle. It's a way of thinking that says when we sit down to legislate, we think about how it can positively impact 7 generations in the future. We know that we can reduce our carbon footprint in this country. We know that we have the resources to make that happen. But the second thing we need to do is also think about the people here and now, which I completely agree with. No carbon infrastructure that is going to ensure that we are protecting communities, all communities, vulnerable communities, everybody, is expensive, and it is going to get even more expensive. You mentioned, Julie, what they're having to do, especially in South Florida, a lot of these municipalities. That is very expensive, that we are shouldering that responsibility on our municipal governments. We need the federal government to step up and ensure that we are building the infrastructure to deal with what we've already sown for ourselves. Because of our massive inaction on this issue, we are going to continue to have rising tides. We're going to continue to have record-breaking heat. And that's why we need to do everything we can to stop it. Not because the problem will be fixed tomorrow, but because what this country is about is ensuring that we're doing better than we did before. And, you know, and not to get too deep into it, but when we talk about housing affordability, when we talk about getting money into the pockets of our families and ensuring that our communities are walkable and that there's more shade, that there's more trees, that the people have access to food, these are all things that work with each other to rise, to bring up the standard of living for our people. So,
Jay, did you want to chime in, or I have another one too?
I wanted to ask you both. Again, this is sort of a national issue with a lot of local impact, but recent changes to Medicare and to Social Security have had a major effect on Florida's population in particular. And I just wanted to get your opinion on where that's been and where you think that's going, and whether that's how that will affect us and what you might be able to do about it on the congressional level. Mr. Frost, let's start with you.
100%. Well, you know, this is an incredibly important issue to me, just ensuring that our people have health care, ensuring that we're taking care of our most vulnerable communities. My grandma, it was March of this year, found herself in a hospital. She's 97 years old. And I remember sitting in the room with the doctor hearing about the procedures that we couldn't do because it wasn't covered for her. I believe that we need to strengthen Medicare, that we need to strengthen Medicaid. You know, I talk about this all the time. I really believe it is important that we expand it to ensure that our seniors have the ability to have it covered, ears, eyes, nose, throat, right? Ensuring that people can get hearing aids, ensuring that people can get mental health care, and ensuring that our seniors can have at-home care that is covered by Medicare and Medicaid. I am for lowering the age of eligibility. We know that Medicare and Medicaid, and specifically Medicare, is the most popular healthcare program in the country. This is what the numbers tell us. I am for a world where every man, woman, and child in this country, every person, has healthcare by virtue of being human that is not connected to their job. That is why I am for a bold legislation like Medicare for all. I think it is important that everyone have healthcare. And it's not just about the healthcare, but it's also about prescription drug prices. We know that if we're able to move to a single payer system, it enables our government the ability to negotiate lower drug prices. And I believe no one should spend more than $200 a year on life-saving and really all prescription drug medication. This is something that we are very behind in as a country. All of the other more developed nations are already providing this to their people. And I believe this is something that we can have in this decade. But in the meanwhile, the steps we take to get there are strengthening what we have, strengthening Medicare, strengthening Medicaid, and ensuring that no one has to pick between rent and going to the doctor.
Well, Medicare for all is the same thing as what Cuba and Canada has tried to do, And we've seen what has happened with those developed countries that have gone there. Again, it goes back to whose money is going to pay for this. And those who work, 90% of us, 98% of us who work do pay for Medicare. I'd like to see everyone to get Medicare, but it needs to be fairly provided. Medicare for all, the single payer system, a contract for healthcare services with private organizations, as in the case of Canada or in the case of Cuba. But at the end of the day, when you need a doctor, you can't see the doctor for the conditions that he just described. You may have to wait up to several months or weeks to get a specialist to come and see you. And by that time, your situation has matured into something that may be life-threatening. We need to keep policies in place. And that's the part of what legislators do. You just can't go ahead and just spend money and keep printing money, because you will eventually run out of other people's money. Everyone who works, who's gainfully employed, and even the Bible says a man's got to work to eat. I say that if you go and work, we will have the opportunity at the federal level to make sure we can legislate and create bills and create laws that will make it fair and equitable. Those who can't work because of their physical condition, there's a way to take care of it. Thank God for the Social Security. Not talking about taking the thing away, but we have to do more, and we can't expect to do more with less.
Oh, thank you. We have so much more we could talk about, but we have come to the end of the time that we've allocated and promised that we wouldn't keep you past. I wanted to give both of our candidates a chance to make a brief statement that would, about 90 seconds, give us an idea of why you believe you're the right choice for this district. And let's start with Mr. Frost.
Well, first and foremost, thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Colonel Wimbish, for coming as well. It's been great to talk about the issues. We are in a moment in time where faith in our democracy is eroding. People are having a hard time paying for the things that they need to pay for. And I have a platform that I essentially call a love letter to our community. We have seen the problems here in Central Florida, and we have provided solutions that will provide the bold transformational change that we need. And that's why I decided to run for Congress in the first place. I was born and raised here. I've been working to end gun violence for the past 10 years of my life. And now I'm looking at taking those experiences and bringing them to the United States Congress. This is Orlando, Florida. We are one of the most incredible cities and the best city here in Central Florida. Why? Because we've always been inclusive of all people around us. And it's important that we have a representative that believes in the ability for our queer and LGBTQ plus folks to be able to marry each other. It's important that we have a legislator that understands that, President Biden is the president because he was fairly elected. In a moment in time where we have seen how fragile democracy is, we need legislators who don't cast doubt on our democracy, but that are going to work to secure it, and that are going to work to ensure that everyone has the right to vote, that everyone can have health care in this country, that people don't have to walk on the streets or go to church or go to school or go in their own community and fear gun violence every day. The leading cause of death for children is guns right now. So we have a lot of work to do. But I'm excited to do it here with every single one of you. So just make sure you go vote. You can go to frostforcongress.com to learn a little bit more about my platform, and we'll see you out in the community, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Colonel Wimbish?
Thank you, Chris. And to all of you there, I'm Calvin Wimbish. Life experiences can't be taught. It must be earned, and I've earned it. I'm a family man. I'm a Christian. I'm a man of integrity. I have core values, much like Martin Luther King, where he wanted all of us to join hands and to work together, regardless of your social, economic, or color, creed, or nationality. I've been married for 46 years and raised 2 children. I started out in the inner city of Baltimore. I went to historical Black college, Morgan State. I got my bachelor's degree, was commissioned as a lieutenant at age 20, went into the service to my country, protecting and serve all of us from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And right now, we still have a bitter problem that existed then and still exists now. By age 20, I was already an officer, a Green Beret. I was a helicopter pilot and commander of troops. I already know how to make decisive decisions, responsible, decisive decisions. Over time, in my 33 years, I also wound up getting a Bronze Star, 3 tours in combat. And why did I do all this? Because I knew back at home, long before 9/11 and beyond that, there's a lot of things we must do. I'm proud to have been a Green Beret. That's one of my greatest accomplishments, a husband and a father. And I'm willing to give back as I have as a teacher and in corporate America. I would like to give more back to the community. Go to votecal2022.org. Read about my contract with Orange County and know this, it'll be the proudest moment and the most honorable moment to be the congressional leader for the Orange County District 10. Thank you all. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you so much, both of you. And for the residents of District 10, this will be obviously on your November 8th ballot. There is a lot more information out there, and we will be covering this race thoroughly. So we hope that you get the information you need to make a decision in this race. But both candidates were so gracious to take some time to introduce themselves, and we look forward to covering this race as it progresses. Thank you.